Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope everyone has had a lovely week. Or at least I'm here in Sacramento, and it's currently raining and cold. I don't know how it is for everyone else, but I'm just glad it is Friday. So, for today's office hours, we are going to be going over section 8. And the way that we are going to do this is we are going to be showing last year's recording that was presented to us by William Allen, who worked for the Needs Analysis Unit. We're going to play that video, and we are going to be pausing the video for questions as he's going along. And not only that, but we also have some supplemental examples for Section 8 that our coworker Rachel Skillman, who works for the Needs Analysis Unit, is going to be presenting. So how this is going to go about, when we're pausing the video, we are going to be pausing the video and then asking for questions. So you guys can be, as the video is going along, feel free to chat, type in your questions or raising your hand. And Jonathan is going to be monitoring those, the chat and then also the raised hands. And we do ask that if you do raise your hand, wait for your name to be called on. And if you could limit your questions to 3 minutes per participant. But other than that, that's all I have. I don't know, Rachel, if you have anything before we get started.
Nope, you can go ahead.
Okay. And again, bear with me, folks. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Okay. Am I sharing my screen?
No, Gabby,
No.
you may have to do um see the other thing that I sent. I think you have to. I'm going to stop your share. I
Okay.
think it might be easier to do that.
Sorry, folks. We thought we had this down. Okay. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes. Right now the screen is black. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay, folks, we are going to go ahead and play the video. This is starting with section 8A.
For Section 8A, this will be for customer charges. Now, not every water system will see the full extent of this section. Typically, it's reserved for public water systems, and I believe there is a service connection cap of about 200 service connections or more. So if you qualify, you should be able to see this section entirely, which will include both residential and non-residential questions. So for our first question is basically it's going to ask if you even charge your customers for water. So if you say no, you'll be asked to explain why, and there's like a selection of like pre-selected options you have to give a quick explanation as to why you don't charge your customers for water. And if we don't have an answer up there, you can always pick other and provide your answer in the text box below, and we'll review that. And it'll still ask you if you have like selectable customer types, because even if you don't charge your customers, you could still indicate what kind of customers you have, both either residential or non-residential. So for now, we'll just pick both. And as you can see, as you're going down section 8A, depending on what answers you provide, it will guide you to the next relevant question that we feel you should be able to answer. So section 8.2 will now be asking about your
Sorry, I am pausing this because I see that someone put a chat in that, Debbie, you said the sound is faint. Can any other folks? I know Jonathan and Richard, you guys said it sounds good. Let me see if I'll try this and see raising the volume. But okay, looks like someone else chatted. Sounds okay to me. I'm gonna continue playing.
Residential service connections. And it's basically, since you testify that you don't charge customers for water, you're not going to be asked anything related to water rate or your water customer charges, or for your residential customers. It's just going to be asking you about infrastructure information such as service connections, the new fee for adding a new connection, or then based off the most common meter size. Yeah. This one just asks you more information about that, and that's pretty much it. That's the quickest way you can get through this section is if you say no.
Okay, folks, I'm gonna pause it here. Are there any questions for this first part of this video? Jonathan, if you could check.
Yeah, we don't have any questions about the content, but we do have a couple comments about the screen being blurry or not in focus. To that, I don't think we can do a whole lot on that end. Right,
No,
Gabby?
because it's showing on the Zoom. So the way we have it now, it's not on my computer. It's like on Zoom is the way that it's showing the video.
We can also, after, this is over, due to the issues, we can also, re-record something where the video or the resolution is more clear as well and publish that if people are having trouble seeing things.
Yes. And this we are recording this session. And also, I forgot to mention this in the beginning, is that these recordings from last year are posted on our eAR webpage under the resources tab, and you'll find this exact video online as well. And again, apologize that it's showing up as blurry. I don't think there's more that we can do. Um, any other questions, Jonathan, in the,
No, that is it.
okay. I'm gonna, and- okay.
Or for your residential customers, it's just going to be asking you about infrastructure information such as service connections, the new fee for adding a new connection, or then based off the most common meter size. Yeah. This one just asks you more information about that, and that's pretty much it. That's the quickest way you can get through this section is if you say no. We're going to go back up though, and we're going to say that yes, we do charge our customers for water. So now you can see we have a different roster of questions that have popped up. Now we're being asked again what kind of customer types we have. For this sample or example, we're going to pick both so we can go through what kind of information you need to write down for both. And then the next question is going to be billing frequency for your for either customer type. So your billing frequency is basically going to be um, oh, sorry. Sorry, I got this one confused. It's basically asking you if your residential and non-residential customers are billed at the same frequency. So if you're billing both of your customer types every month, every 2 months, then you would say yes. If they're different, then you would say no and indicate for either one. So if you say no, then you would look for your most common residential water rate structure. Um, and it's going to ask you, and then ask you the same question, basically, if your water rate structure is the same for both customer types. So you can indicate yes or no. So it'll be asking if your billing frequency or your water rate structure are the same. So for this example, we're going to pick yes for both. And we're going to say our billing frequency is going to be, we'll do monthly. Now, this billing frequency comes into play later when you write down your water rates. Depending on what your frequency is, it'll actually take that into account when in section 8B, when we produce the what we believe is your monthly water rate for a certain amount of water. So just to keep that in mind, we'll discuss that later, but your billing frequency does matter a lot as far as like how the calculation inputs your data. So going down to probably the most
Okay, folks, I am pausing this here because we do have, like I had mentioned, Rachel was going to be presenting us with some slides that hopefully better explain the table for the rate structures.
Can
And
everybody see this screen? Okay,
I can see it on my end.
cool. If anybody can't, let me know. Hold on, I think we have a couple hand raises. Let's see. Okay, great.
Looks like yes.
Okay, sounds great. Okay. And so I just wanted to highlight that the way that Alan will describe this in the video is also very helpful, and we just thought it might be easier to see if everything was kind of written out. So please feel free to review this section of the video that we're going to skip if you want to hear somebody go through this in a slightly different way. But I'm just going to go through some of these common rate structures. So the first one is single or flat rate, which is often unmetered. And this refers to a rate that's a static charge per billing season, independent of water consumption. And so an example might be a $45.10 per month charge for drinking water plus an additional charge per month included in the bill for fire suppression and wastewater services. So regardless of how much water is used, customers are being charged $55.10 a month for drinking water, and the services that come with that. Another type of rate structure that water systems might have is a fixed base rate and a uniform usage rate. And this means that the base rate is fixed, so it is non-volumetric. It does not depend on the amount of water used. And the usage rate is also fixed and does not depend on the volume of water used. So an example might be a $45 base rate for single family customers that are charged an additional $6 per 100 cubic feet of water that they use each month or during each billing cycle. One of the most common types of rate structures that we see that water systems have is a fixed base rate and a variable usage rate, which means that the base rate does not depend on the amount of water used or any other factor, but the usage rate is variable and typically increases in price as more water is used. And so we call these tiers. We'll talk about this a little later on, but I've put this example up for a multifamily customer that would be charged with a $10 base rate. And then for each 100 cubic feet of water that they use within these tiers, so 0 to 400 cubic feet of water would be billed at $5 per 100 cubic feet, which is their unit of measure. And you can see it kind of goes up. So the more water that you use, the more you're charged per each unit of water used. And we'll go through a couple of these examples a little bit in more detail later on. You may also have a rate structure with a variable base rate and a uniform usage rate, where the base rate would change based on certain features of your customer class, like location, climate, elevation is one that we see a lot, perhaps the size, lot size or the meter size, or your usage amount. But then the usage rate would be constant and billed at a constant volume, regardless of how much water is being consumed. And here's an example where the customer would be charged a base rate that was different based on the elevation that they were at, but a uniform usage rate of $6 per 100 cubic feet. And finally, kind of the most complicated one combines the base rate variable and the usage rate variable. And so the base rate would change with the features like size, location, or usage amount. And the usage rate also changes per tier, so it increases in price as more water is used. And I won't really, here's a similar example where the base rate varies by elevation, and then the usage rate also varies kind of according to how much water you're using in each billing cycle. And if you want to check out any more information about different types of rate structures or try to figure out what rate structure your water system has. I've linked some guidance on the most common reporting residential rate structures and then that are used in the section 8 eAR. And there's some help tips, and these slides will be available for you in this recording as well. So
Thank you, Rachel.
thank you.
I do see, Jonathan, if you want to read the
Yeah.
questions that we have, please.
Okay, we do have one raised hand from Laura Dixon. Does Laura want to speak to this, a question? Then we can get into the chat questions. Oh, looks like Laura replied in the chat here, so start with that. She says here, we have no rate. We do not charge residents for water. We have no meters. I am finding there are questions I can't answer on the forms.
Okay. So, in that first portion of the video, Will does go, that very first part, he shows the questions that when you choose no, you do not charge for, you do not charge customers, and the following questions should appear. Are those have you chosen? I don't know if Laura, was it? If you could raise your hand and maybe give us a little more background. Um, if you want to speak. Okay, I see your hand
Okay,
raised.
can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, and now I've got so many reports in the last like couple of weeks. I'm trying to find the one I was reading this morning that was asking so many questions about rates and how we determine it and meters. But now I'm sorry, I can't figure out who sent it to me. I'm trying to go back through my email because I've had new other reports to fill out, like the cross connections and such. So I'm trying to figure out who sent, I think it's an annual one with contact and, contact updates, et cetera. And I can't, there was so many questions on there that didn't give an option for, a situation like ours. So
Okay, so you're talking about the entirety of the electronic annual report, I believe is
I
what you're.
guess so. That must be
Yes.
what it is. Now, who did that come from your district? I don't know.
So our team manages the portal system.
Okay.
But for any questions that you have in regardings to like how to fill out the report or where can you find the information, that would be whoever your regulating agency is. Um, do you know who your regulating agency is?
I mean,
If
does
you,
that mean District 19?
yes, yes. Do you
Okay,
have their contact
I
information?
do. Yeah.
Yeah, so
We
they would,
just got switched to them. So,
okay. Yeah. I recommend that you contact them because they'll be able to help you to understand like what questions need to fill in or where you can find the information for
okay.
that. And
And
also,
I couldn't even edit it this morning. I couldn't change the phone numbers. Like I don't know if I guess
okay.
they can send me
Oh,
something
okay.
else.
So you were having technical difficulties as well?
Yeah, yeah. The
O-
boxes that required answers were like not responding. I felt like I was looking at a PDF or something.
Okay. You know what? With in Jonathan, if you could reply to Laura and we're to give you our email to email us in the inbox,
Okay,
especially if you're having, yeah, technical difficulties. That's something that, yes, we can help you with.
okay,
So I'll say what our email is, and then Jonathan, if you could also put it in the response to Laura, that would be great. But so our email
Yes.
is DDW,
DDW. Okay,
yes,
okay,
dash
mm-hmm.
E as in Eric, so
Okay,
EAR, E as in
okay,
Eric, A
okay,
R, R as in Rob, at waterboards.
okay. Sorry about that, Doc.
You're good. .ca.gov. And Jonathan is also posting it.
Okay,
I
Just
thank
also
you.
I
So
dropped it
reply.
as well. Sorry
yeah.
to
Awesome.
So
jump the gun.
wait, Laura, in reply to your chat, I did wrote that email address is there as well.
Thank you.
Yes. So Laura, go ahead and email us and we will help you with the difficulties that you're having of not being able to fill out the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, All right. Another question here from Gene Miller. They say we have under 200 services and have always had to fill out this portion of the eAR. I didn't know there was any way to get out of it.
Okay, so you must be talking about the first where Will says this is the easiest way to go through. The first part, that's if you do not charge your customers. Rachel, I don't know if you want to chime in. Um, this is if you do not charge your customers, then you will not have to fill out the largest portion of Section 8. If you do charge your customers, then yes, you do have to go through and answer all the questions.
Is the question, and maybe I'm just misremembering what Will says about the systems themselves that need to fill out. Does he say something about the number of service connections that need to be met to qualify for this section?
So for this section, it's he does, but it's changed since then. But
Uh-huh.
it's for all community water systems need to fill out the section. But yeah, so Jean, I'll reiterate. Jean's question was, we have under 200 services, and I have always had to fill out this portion of the eAR. I didn't know that there was any way to get out of it. And Jean, looks like Rachel is inputting, I think, what I may have said already. Unless Jean, if you want to give, I don't know if this helps you, or maybe if you want to raise your hand and if there's more you want to share.
Okay, so she does say here, or they say, I am having severe technical difficulties with accessing the portal. I wrote for help but haven't heard back yet. How long I should wait before trying to write and ask for help again? So, I mean, I guess I can speak to this, but if you're having technical difficulties, please email us at that DDW-EAR, and I'll reply to your comment with that email address. Just email us, and we'll make sure to get back to you as soon as we can,
Yeah,
very
so
quickly, hopefully.
just to give you guys like it's our customer service team, we're trying to answer as quickly as possibly as we can because we know the deadline is coming upon us. And so we do have the email isn't the only thing that we handle working for the Division of Drinking Water. So it does take us some time to go through, but we are trying to answer as quickly as possible, especially knowing that the deadline is upon us very soon. Okay.
Oh, and
Any? Yes.
sorry, I was going to mention we can also leave you call you as well if
Yes.
that's easier for you. Okay. And with that, that is the last of the questions.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and share video file. And I'm just getting to the video. Bear with me. Oops. Sorry, folks. It was when we practiced this, we didn't do it on Zoom. Okay. I'm gonna press play now.
Calculate your water rate on the back end. Depending what unit of measure, things will be converted over. Now, the most common thing I notice is that when somebody picks, whenever you have an exceptionally large water rate, typically the issue is that gallons was selected other than 1,000 gallons. So if you're writing in terms of like, let's say your usage is up to 2,000 gallons, and you have selected 1,000 gallons as your unit of measure, and you write the number 2,000. Now it's going to read that as 2,000 gallons instead of actually 2,000 gallons. So just want to emphasize that paying attention to what kind of unit measures you're working with has a huge impact on the final number that you'll get. So for this example, we'll just do gallons, keep it simple. And then over here, we just want to have you indicate if there's anything that affects any kind of variances that affects your residential water rates of any kind. So it could be for agricultural use. There could be a drought factor that's incorporated into your water rates. It could be different depending on what elevation the customer's at. Just something to give us more of a more detailed purview of like how water rates are distributed across your system. These just give us a better idea of like what is actually being represented by the data here, because we know we're asking for an average, so it helps us caveat that average. And then down below in A1.6, so your residential customers can be split up into single or multifamily units. Single family being that of like a housing or a single like housing unit. Multifamily relating to like your apartment complexes or townhouses, usually where there's like groups of service connections put together. And for now, we'll say yes. So we're going to have both. We have both single family and multifamily building classes for this case. And we're going to say, did your water rates change in the reporting year? We're going to say no for this one. Then we're going to scoot down. Lenny, do you mind scrolling down a little bit? Can you scroll back up? Sorry, just noticing that the table didn't load in properly. Do you mind scrolling back up? Maybe we didn't select something correctly. Yes. Oh, for a 1.6, please select yes if you don't mind. Or sorry, below that for did you watch streets change? You mind scrolling back up? Scrolling back up all the way. Oh, that's why. For the billing, for the rate structure, do you mind selecting just scroll down a little bit? Instead of other, can you select base rate, fixed, usage rate, variable? Yeah, perfect. Okay, so actually, that's a pretty good point to bring up. So if you select a rate structure we cannot accommodate for, such as allocation or other, you won't see the table to input your data. And the table will change depending on which rate structure you select. So I find this one to be the most common one that I've worked with. So we'll start with this as the first example. So now that we've selected our billing, or our billing classes of
Gabby, I believe you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got
We're
you.
going to pause this, and Rachel is going to give us examples of that table that where it breaks down the rate structures that hopefully will be able to help you guys a little bit more with seeing some real life examples of questions that we have received.
Okay, can everybody see the screen and hear me? All right.
Yes.
Okay, great. And similarly to before, a lot of these examples, nothing about what's in the video is incorrect. It just, we felt it would be a little clearer to work it out and show you on some slides. So here is an example of a rate structure that we have been asked a question about by a real, water system. And so I wanted to give you all an example of how to fill in that table A1.8 based on what you select for your rate structure in A1.1. And so this rate structure would be an example of a fixed base rate and a variable usage rate. And it's an $88 base rate to 12 HCF, and then $9 per HCF up to 22 HCF, 13 per HCF to 32 HCF, and $17 per 100 cubic feet for any usage above 32 HCF. So I'm going to walk you through how we would enter this in the table. So here's an example. Here's what the table would look like if you were to select your base rate fixed and usage rate variable. And an important piece that we need to mention, and it is in the video, but I should have put it here in the slides. So you'll also have to select the appropriate number of tiers for your rate structure. And so in this particular case, there are 4 tiers. And so I'll work through how to go to get each of them. So this first, and there is a one of the selections that you would check just above before seeing this table in section A 1.8 would be putting the number of tiers that you would have for your residential billing class. So in this case, our first tier, we're going to start with this $88 base rate up to 1,200 cubic feet of water used. And so our base rate is going to be $88, and we're going to enter it here in this residential tier 1 base rate. Our usage rate within this tier is actually going to be $0 per HCF, because within this tier, we're not actually charging customers anything per amount of water used. It's just $88 until you reach this limit. So in our usage rate here, our cost per unit of measure for this first tier, we're actually going to put 0, because within this tier up to 12 HCF, we charge customers $0 per unit. And then in this usage rate maximum volume of water per tier, we want to put the top measure of that tier. So, up until what unit of water used, up to what quantity of water used would this rate structure apply to? And so this, for this first tier, would be up to 12 HCF of water. We only charge a $8 base rate and $0 per unit. Then for tier 2, we still have this $88 base rate, but the way that the table will appear specifically for section A 1.8, if you select this very common rate structure of base rate fixed and usage rate variable, we've made it so that you won't actually see these boxes. So you won't feel like you need to enter anything. And we'll talk about a little bit later why that might not be the case in some instances. But for this specific rate structure, you don't need to re-enter your $88 base rate in any of these tiers, because this 88 applies to all of these tiers. So for tier 2, on top of our $88 base rate, we have a $9 per HCF charge up to 22 HCF. So that is what we would enter in our cost per unit of measure, would be $9 per unit in this tier, and it's up to 22. For tier 3, very similar, we have our $13 per unit of measure up to 3,200 cubic feet. And finally, for our last tier, we only need to enter this last usage rate. And that is because we have that is because we have our $88 base rate that does not need to be re-entered. And when we have a variable rate, basically there's usually, unless for some reason, perhaps you cap, like if there's some sort of maximum that you could charge or maximum quantity of water that could be used. But typically this last tier is anything above a certain amount of water used, this base rate applies to. So in this case, it's 32 HCF up to, infinity HCF. And so we do not need to enter anything in this maximum volume of water per tier, because there is no maximum volume of water per tier that this $17 per HCF variable usage rate would apply to. Okay. And I know this is a lot of information, so we will pause for questions after this. I just wanted to hopefully, walk through another common example that you might see, and then I'm happy to go back to any of these if anybody has questions. So I also have included an example of a variable base rate and a variable usage rate, and I tried to keep it pretty simple. So basically, you are being charged different bases in different base rates within different tiers. So you're both being charged a different base rate and a different usage rate. So a variable rate for the amount of water used in each tier. And I don't want to, bore everybody with saying all of these numbers, but I do just want to highlight, in this case, you would need to enter, multiple base rates, right, for every tier. And here we have kind of like the same maximum volume of water per tier applies to both our usage rate and our base rate. I know that's a little bit confusing. There's a lot of repetition in this, so I'm happy to clarify any of this later. I did just want to highlight here as well that this is, like Will was saying, it's very important to make sure we're choosing the correct unit of measure, and then making sure that the numbers within this table apply to the unit of measure that you selected. And so in this example, I said that I used I said that I used gallons as my unit of measure. And so since this tier is up to 1,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons, I want to make sure I'm entering these in gallons. However, as Will mentioned, a common, not error, but a common thing that might happen is perhaps you enter gallons, but you meant to enter 1,000 gallons as your unit of measure. And so if, for example, you charged customers in 1,000 gallons as a unit of measure, you would want to enter this 1,000 instead it would be 1 if you had selected your unit of measure as 1,000 gallons as your unit of measure. Another example that you might see for a variable base rate and a variable usage rate, I wanted to highlight that they don't always need to be the same. So on the last slide, I highlighted that these maximum volume of water per tier, apply evenly to each of the tiers. So the tiers are the same depending on for both the base rate and the usage rate. But in this case, I've highlighted how we may have it's still a variable usage rate, but for example, this variable rate applies to the same base rate. So I have a $10 base up to 2,000 gallons, but then within that sort of that tier, customers could have different usage rates. So I could charge 5 cents per gallon up to 1,000 gallons and 10 cents per gallon from, 1,000 to 2,000 gallons. And so I've highlighted how if I were to put that into this table, I want to make sure that I'm putting the information for the base rate twice because it would technically apply to both tiers of this variable usage rate. So hopefully this isn't too confusing. And then I would apply, I would put the two different tiers for my usage rate variable in these boxes. Okay. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight because as you could see in this example, this is what you would actually see if you had selected a base rate of fixed and a usage rate of variable. But if you were to select some of the other rate structures, we haven't yet made it so that the electronic annual report will actually block out the numbers that you don't need to enter. And so there may be cases where you don't have to enter the numbers again. So you can essentially assume that basically that these entries are blank and that you don't need to enter anything in these boxes. And so this is an example we'll go through later in this video of a variable base rate and a variable usage rate. And I've highlighted that even though all of these red boxes appear, some of them do not need to be entered due to the rate structure that just like the way that it would actually need to be entered. And so please excuse my phone ringing. And so I just wanted to highlight that, for example, in tier 3 and tier 2 of this, base rate maximum, there's no need to re-enter the fixed base rate, like I said before. And for these entries, there's no need to enter the top unit of measure because it goes, from, in this case, 200 to infinity units of water used, and this one would go, this $4 per unit of measure would apply to anything over 100 units of water used. Okay, I know that was quite a mouthful, so I'll stop sharing for now and we can do some questions. And if I need to reshare the PowerPoint for anybody to review anything, I would be very happy to do so. So thank you for bearing with me as I said a lot of numbers to you.
Thank you, Rachel. Jonathan, are there any questions regarding what Rachel went over?
Nope, no questions or raised hands this time.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue. I'm going to share my screen.
So I kind of briefed this really quickly per year. So if last year to this year you probably saw the same table and you're saying like, no, there's no change, we'd want you to indicate that by just selecting no change. If there has been a slight change or if there's been any increase in like cost, we do wish you would indicate that by selecting one of the options we have already below, or if it's not listed there, just select yes and then other, and then give us a brief description as to why. And then below that at A1.10, it's basically asking what is the last date of the most recent rate structure change. So if you have had a change, it's just asking if you can estimate like when that change occurred. And then here again, we're asking you to briefly describe what kind of changes were made to your rate structure. You could say things like, we have a new system, we charge more for our base rate, things like that. And then for A1.12 and A1.13, it's basically asking for proof of your water rate structure. So that could either be a link to a system's website for customer charges. You could put the URL there. For A1.13, it's just a rate structure document that you can upload that helps us verify the water rate that you're getting on the back end in a one point or in AB or section AB. The water rate document is very important. It helps us QA/QC a lot of issues that we've had in the past when it comes to like problematic water rates and being able to identify what is the correct water rate structure the system should be seeing or should be selecting. And then another box just to explain if you have like if you want to give more explanation behind your single and multifamily rate structures and how they're allocated. And then also to indicate if your customer bill includes any non-drinking water charges. So if that water bill includes things like wastewater, stormwater, electricity, or if it's incorporated into other utilities, we'd want to know. So you could say yes for that one. And then we ask you to explain which kind of services are included in that water rate. And of course, we also provide an other text box below. And then down below, it's that you get once again you get hit to the residential service connection questions. We could skip through that. And since we indicated that we had both residential and non-residential customers, since you selected non-residential, if you select both or non-residential, you'll see A3, which asks you a very similar set of questions to the residential customers. So for the first one, it's basically asking your unit measure. Again, we're going to pick gallons. What kind of connection types you have for your non-residential customer, for your non-residential connections. So you could say commercial, landscape. And then if you have other, obviously you could put it in the other box. A3.6 is basically asking you if you have a variable rate structure. So we could say yes, unless you just charge everyone the same, no matter how much water they're consuming. And depending on which kind of non-residential customers you selected, it'll provide a box for you to determine the number of tiers of charge that you have per customer type. So we can say for commercial 1, for landscape we'll do 2, and then for I think you selected other we'll do 3. And as you can see, that affects the table below. Depending what number of tiers you have, you'll see different levels of cells that are available for you to fill out information. So for our commercial, we'll just use the same example, $100 base rate, 100 gallons as the maximum tier of consumption, and the costs per unit of measure. Now, there's something I should probably point out with this table. You notice that all the cells are available. Like for instance, commercial tier 1, since there's only one tier, doesn't make sense for us to put in 100 for the maximum unit of measure. We utilize the
Okay. Everyone, we're gonna pause here. And Rachel, if you could share slides. Again, Rachel has some slides to help explain that second table.
Yes. And this is, similar to what Will is going to discuss, but I just thought it might be, again, a little more clear if you could actually see. So if you were to keep watching the video, just in the interest of time, Will, oh, I guess, hold on. I really thought I had it. So sorry, everyone. Okay. So this is actually the one that he is filling out right now. So in the interest of time, we don't go ahead and fill out that other category. So I've only highlighted the commercial and landscape classes. Um, but I just wanted to make it clear what Will is saying, which is what I was saying earlier, which is that although you will see all of these red boxes populate, you don't actually need to enter anything for some of the boxes. And so in this particular case, you wouldn't need to enter anything for this commercial tier 1 top unit of measure. And that would be because there is no top unit of measure because there's only one tier. And so basically because this is actually like a fixed it's actually a fixed base rate and a uniform usage rate. There's only one tier, right? So there's only a base rate and a variable, or sorry, and a usage rate, and both of those are fixed, and it does not matter what unit of water usage you have. And then this third cell, you don't need to fill out, right? Because it's whenever there are more than whenever there is more than one tier, this top unit of measure does not need to be filled out for the last tier because it's assumed that the cost per unit of measure that you put in this box would apply to anything above $500. So this is almost like an infinity, but you don't need to put anything there. And in another example that you might see where there's like cells that you don't need to fill out, I've shared one that would be for two different rate structures. Both are fixed base rate and variable usage rate. But actually, there is only one tier for the commercial class, and then there's three tiers for the institutional class. And so in this particular case, the way that this is different, so there is only one tier for this commercial class compared to, there's only one tier for this commercial class in this example. But the difference is that this commercial class has a uniform usage rate. And so the customer is being charged $2 per unit, no matter what the usage is. And in this example, the usage rate is variable. And so we do want to note sort of what the sort of top unit of measure is. So up to 1 unit of measure, they are charged $5 per unit. But I guess I wanted to again highlight that there's no need to re-enter this fixed base rate when there are multiple tiers. So because the base rate is fixed, it's assumed that this $25 base rate applies to all three of the tiers for the institutional customers. And you don't need to enter anything in this box because there's no need to enter the top unit measure for multiple tiers because this $6 is applied to everything over 100. And that is where I'll stop for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Any questions, Jonathan, in the chat or raised hands?
There are no questions and no raised hands.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the video again.
Water they're consuming. And for this example, you're saying that no matter how much water they consume, I'm still charging them $2 per gallon on top of their base rate. For things with more than one tier, you'd want to provide a top unit of measure for the first tier. Not for tier 2. You want to remember your last tier, you want to leave, we'll say 500 gallons because it's a landscape non-residential customer. $2 per gallon, I think is fine. And then for the second tier, we'll leave tier 2 blank for the base rate. We'll say that the base rate's fixed. And so you're being charged $100 no matter how much water you're consuming. Um, and after that, we'll just leave that one blank as well. So that'll indicate basically that you have $100 per base rate, and 500 and beyond will be the second tier. And now you're being charged, let's say $10 per gallon now that you're using more than 500 gallons per billing frequency.
Will, can you tell me which cell, what to put in each cell?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So for tier two, we'll leave that one as put 100 for that one. And then for that one, we'll leave that one blank. And then that one we'll put 10. So what this is saying is that for your first tier of landscape irrigation, you're being charged $100. It goes up to 500 gallons. And for those 0 to 500 gallons, you're going to be charged $2 per gallon. For the second tier, you're still being charged $100 base rate, but now it's anywhere from 500 to an infinite amount of gallons, 500 and beyond. You're going to be charged $10 per gallon now. So that's basically what that's saying. And it'd be the same logic for other. We could scroll back up. I don't think we need to fill out the other one. And then if you don't mind, if we could scroll back up to the top. So I know that was like a lot of information to run through. Again, we'll have time for questions afterwards. I'd be happy to go through this again. It just takes like a lot of familiarity with the no, you can stay on 8A with the section itself. I think it's a lot simpler once you get into it and start reading it like line by line. And like I said, if you guys have run into any trouble, feel free to like email the help email that we'll provide afterwards. So that was just an example of like a typical run for a water system. Usually they'll have both customer types. Typically they'll have both single family and multifamily customers. And typically you'll see at least a base rate with a variable usage rate. But that's not always the case. So for this instance, we'll say, yes, we charge for water, and we'll say we only have residential customers. And then if you don't mind scrolling down all the way. And then as you can see, if you don't mind scrolling down to the bottom, Wendy. Now, as you can see there, we actually lost that non-residential customer charge section, and that's because you only indicated you have residential customers. And then vice versa is true. If you select only non-residential customers, you'll lose, you won't see the residential section, and you won't be required to fill that out. So if you don't mind selecting residential. I think where the most common issue comes up is just selecting the correct rate structure. So if you scroll back up, we'll go to the rate structure question. So we'll say this time we have a base rate that's variable and a usage rate that's uniform. So we'll do base rate variable, usage rate variable, because that's technically the most complicated one you can have on here. So what we're saying here is that depending on how much volume of water you're consuming, you're being charged a different base rate and a different usage rate per tier. So for this one, we're going to leave it at monthly for our frequency. We're going to leave it at gallons for our unit of measure. We'll just say that those things also are incorporated into our rate structure. And for this one, we'll say, yes, we have two different ones. We're going to pick, I see somebody raised their hand. Are we going to be taking questions now, or do you want to like hold off?
I'd like to hold off to the end.
Okay, got you. Yeah, if you could just make a mental note of what you had a question about, I'd be happy to go back and talk it over. So for A1.6, we're going to say yes. And then for A1.7B, we're going to say we have 3 tiers for our single family and only 2 tiers. Actually, let's leave it as pick 1 for our multifamily. Now, the pick 1 option basically indicates... Oh, no, we can't. Okay, so you saw that right there. If you leave it at pick 1, you'll see that there's a flag above. It says 2 or more tiers defined for usage rate structure. Now that's a warning letting you know that since you selected you had a variable base rate and a variable usage rate, there should be more than just 1 tier per customer type. So to fix that, you basically go back up here and be like, oh, sorry, I misclicked. I meant to select 2 tiers. And you'll see that disappear as you type in data. So we'll say for a single family, our first tier is going to be for our base rate. We'll say it's $10. Sorry. Yeah, we'll say it's $10. So for the first cell, it's basically asking the same thing for our usage rate. What is the maximum volume of water here? So we'll say this goes up to 100 gallons. And we'll do the same thing for usage rate. And as you can see, this does allow you to do some complex reporting. You can say that your first tier has a different volume maximum for your base rate than it does for your usage rate. But for simplicity's sake, we'll say it's the same thing. So from 0 to 100, this is how much you're being charged for your base rate and how much you're being charged for your usage. So we'll say that you're being charged $2 per use or per gallon. Okay. And then for your second tier, we'll say this is up to 200 gallons. We'll say your base rate is now going to be $15. Once again, it'll be 200. And we'll say you're getting charged $4 per gallon now. And then as you can see, those warning signs went away as you inputted data correctly to match what you selected above. Yep, you got it right. So we'll say that the second tier goes up to 300. Now remember, if you want to account for sorry, if you want to account for like anything beyond 200, you'd want to leave that sub below blank. So we'll say instead of 300, do you mind deleting it? And we'll say for this one, yeah, 20, and we'll leave that one blank, and then we'll just say 6. And then multifamily, you could just do the same thing you did for the single family tier 1. Now, leaving the last tier blank for the volume of water per tier is pretty important when it comes to how we actually calculate the average water rate that we use. I'll get into detail about that in 8B, but just keep in mind that what we ask for can sometimes we ask for an average water rate at 6 HCF per month. So across like all water systems, what we look at is we standardize your water rate to say how much would you charge a customer for water if they use 600 cubic feet of water for a month? And so our backend calculation basically takes this data and converts it over into that specific unit. Now, whenever you're indicating this, 6 HCF can easily go beyond your last tier. If you like, let's say we put, I can't remember the exact conversion of what 6 HCF or 6 HCF is in gallons, but let's say that your tier 3 was 100 gallons. The calculation would have a hard time accommodating because now you haven't indicated how much you charge after 100 gallons because that's your top volume and there's no other volume afterwards. So sometimes that can come into play when it comes into how you write it in the table. Okay, I think that looks good to me. Mind scrolling down? Okay, I think this is okay to move on to section 8B, so we'll click next. You want to make sure that you're
Okay, any questions? If not, we will go to section B now. John.
And no questions or raised hands this time.
Okay, I am going to fast forward this to go into section 8B. Just to let you guys know, most of you may know if you've already been reporting in the eAR, but in regards to section 8, how long it can take to, turn my camera on. How long it can take from toggling from section 8A and section 8B. It does take a long time, and we're aware of that, and we know that you guys are aware of that. But for those of you who are new, there's a lot going on on the back end for section 8A and 8B. So just bear with the system. Like as I mentioned, there's a lot going on, so it takes a long time to toggle from 8AB and 8A and 8B. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. Okay.
okay. Yeah, you captured it perfectly. Because we have that backend calculation related to A1.8, it takes a while to incorporate all the data you inputted and convert it to that 6 HCF per month standard customer charge that we use across the state. So once you finally load it into section 8B, you should be greeted with the first question, B0. The information you're going to be reporting is going to be related to your water system's income and expenses. And we just want to capture if this income and expenses is related to a calendar year or a fiscal year of your definition. So if you select calendar year, it'll automatically assume, like obviously it's going to be the previous calendar year from January 1st to December 31st. But if you select fiscal year, you can actually define what that fiscal year start date is for yourself using the month, day, year format. So for this example, we'll just say calendar year to make it easier for ourselves. So for B1, basically it's going to be asking you generalized questions about your water system's revenue from different sources. So B1.1, um, what is the total revenue you collect from your water rates for residential customers only? Now, this is specifically related to how much income you're coming from related to water consumption charges. So your customer rates and charges. I don't believe we're not looking for other incorporated data into this part. So like you don't want to incorporate if you charge them like for garbage and including like on top of their utility and stuff like that. You just want the straight number from their water rates alone. So we'll say for our calendar year, we get $1,000 from our customers. We have a very small system. For B1.3, this is going to be like where you incorporate those other fees and charges related to your water rates. So instead of just being straight water rates revenue, now you can incorporate other utility charges that you give to your customers. And we do have examples below, such as late fees, notice fees, penalties, and shutoff fees that are incorporated into those water rate charges. And then B1.5, basically, if your water system, anyone scrolling back up? Basically, if your water system received revenue from like a local county due to property sales or general grants from the general fund, you'd want to incorporate them here. So we'll say for this one, we'll do stormwater tax or fee. And then you want to just write down the total amount you gained from that revenue. And then you could also type in how much revenue that was transferred out of your system towards the county or other governmental offices due to these fees. So we'll say we gained 100, but we transferred out 50. And then this B1.7 is just to capture anything else that's that you generate revenue from your customers that's not related to water rates or late fees. So anything else you want to capture here, and you can give a description as to what this amount is related to. Yeah, like a cell tower. And then it'll auto calculate or auto summarize what you have inputted and basically give you what we think is going to be your total annual revenue for the reporting year. And then in B1.9, so this is that table that gives you that where all of the data you inputted in will produce an outcome. I'm kind of glad we got an error because this helps us walk through a troubleshooting scenario. So with B1.9, we've incorporated a lot of like yellow to red flags that indicate that there's probably a problem going on with your water rate and how it was reported. So for this instance, we got a red flag saying that our water rate is exceptionally high because now we're saying that we charge customers $500 or greater than $500 for water. And as you can see, there's different tiers, 6 to 24 HCF. Basically, it auto calculates the amount you would charge a customer for your water system at 600 cubic feet of water consumption for a month. And so the auto calculation is saying that we're charging customers $26,000 per month for 600 cubic feet of water. So the way we'd go about fixing this is to say you could either do an alternative amount if you don't want to go through the rigmarole of going back and trying to troubleshoot, or if you can't figure out how to troubleshoot. And you can provide an alternative amount. We'll say like, no, that looks completely wrong. If we were going to charge customers 600 cubic feet of water for a month, I'd say we charge them like, I don't know, $300. So you could type in the 300 and you can write a comment saying, auto calculation is incorrect. This is how much we would charge. Please see rate structure submitted or something like that. And what we'll do is that whenever we utilize these water rates, typically we'll take your alternative amount over your auto calculated amount, just for QA/QC's sake. But we would prefer if you would actually go in and describe or go in and work with the table to give us like a more accurate result. So for this example, Wendy, if you don't mind, we're going to go back to A1.A, or my bad, to 8A, section 8A to fix that error. So it looks like our water rate is exceptionally high. So we're charging $26,000, I believe. So that might just be an issue with, that might be the actual number depending on the fake numbers we inputted. So I think a better way to fix this would probably be just to use 1,000 gallons instead of just gallons. I believe that's a problem because yes, six like 100 cubic feet. I just googled it. Is about 4,500 gallons. So we might be our quick example might be a little bit too high. So if you go back to eight, there we go. Did you just select 1,000 gallons?
Yes.
Okay, got you. So that might not always be the issue, but that's one I see as a very common one is whenever you're reporting things in gallons, typically there might be a mistake with like how you actually think you're reporting compared to like what's going to be represented. So for this case, switching it to 1,000 gallons seems to fix the issue. If that looks more reasonable, let's say like
Gabby, I think I accidentally stopped it a little early. I apologize.
Okay, it's totally fine if you want to go ahead and share your
Yeah,
example.
so sorry about that. Yeah.
You're totally fine.
And finally, this is the last one that I'll share some slides for, but again, Will does just kind of walk through the way to calculate this, and we thought it would be easier to see if we put it on some slides. So this is section B 1.9, and this is how it connects back to section A 1.8. So here's what we've calculated. Here's what has been auto-calculated for the total drinking water cost per 6 HCF. And here's what the table looks like. And if you remember, you don't have to enter anything in these tiers. So here's how we get that number. Here's how the auto calculation gets that number. So we want to start by thinking about 6 HCF as the unit of that we're trying to get a charge for. And 600 cubic feet is equivalent to roughly 4,500 gallons. And in this example, as you just saw, if we don't have our unit of measure in 1,000 gallons, then our water rate is really high. So we've gone and we've changed our unit of measure to be 1,000 gallons. And so in our unit of measure being 1,000 gallons, 6 HCF, which is 4,500 gallons of water, is 4.5 thousand gallons in our unit of measure. So now we have to figure out what tier we're in to know how to do this calculation. So since we're trying to find 4.5 thousand gallons, and this is in, which is in thousand, these numbers are entered in 1,000 gallons. This is saying that the maximum volume of water for this tier is 100,000 gallons. And so 4.5 thousand gallons is below 100,000 gallons. And so we are in tier 1. So once you're figured out what tier you're in, you want to take your base rate and your usage rate for that tier and plug them into a formula that is the base rate plus the base rate plus the usage rate times the quantity used that we are trying to find. Sorry, I know this looks like division sign, but actually I'm trying to say that this is $2 time like per unit of measure. And so we would actually want to multiply this $2 by the amount that we're trying to find. And so just to go through this even further, we have our $10 base rate coming from here in tier 1, and then our usage rate of $2 coming from this part of tier 1. And then our our amount that we're trying to calculate the amount for is 4.5 thousand gallons. And so that comes out to $10 plus $2 times 4.5, which is $10 plus $9, which is $19 per 6 HCF. And when it's auto-calculated and filled into B1.9, it rounds this $19 up to $20 per 600 cubic feet of water. I will stop there, and I know I see PJ has their hand raised, so I can always go back to these slides if you'd like to see them again.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yes.
Jonathan, if you want to unmute. You said
I can
PJ had
also-
his hand?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Never mind.
Hi, PJ.
You can unmute, PJ. think if you're talking, PJ, you have to click on the microphone icon. While we wait for PJ to figure out, Jonathan, are there any questions in the
Yeah.
chat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, PJ said sorry, I don't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So from Debbie Turner, she's got a few comments here. So they say for total revenue, where do you put adjustments to income? And then continue saying customer overpayment and deferred income adjustment. And these are both negative values.
Rachel, do you know what question she's referring to?
I believe it's in the earlier sections that Will was discussing before I got into the rate structure. Um, I can check out
I
the
can.
answers to this and put them in the chat.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so just
Thank,
reply to her.
yeah, thanks for your patience, Debbie.
Okay.
Section
Oh,
B1,
B1.
what she mentioned.
And I can actually pull that up. Or unless Rachel, are you taking care of it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can look at it and answer the questions.
Okay, cool.
We can either return to it later once I get an answer, or I can put it
Okay.
in the chat, or a combination of both. Yeah.
Sounds good. Any other questions? And Debbie, if you didn't hear, Rachel is going to be helping you. She's going to type in the answer and then we will go over it again so everyone can hear as well once Rachel finds the answer to that. Okay, I am going to go ahead. Anything else, Jonathan? Sorry,
No,
before I start.
that's it for questions.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and continue the video. Sorry, folks, it takes me. Okay.
So it would basically be 4.5 times 2 because that's how much we're charging per unit. So that's 4.5 times 2 plus the $10 base rate. So that should give us that $20 outcome you saw on the back end there. And then if you could go back to 8B. The table can be a little tricky
Sorry,
to
folks.
the eAR to its full extent and get a wording in the same unit of measure. That's just like a very common problem I've seen. But like I said, if you don't feel like going through all that trouble or you don't feel like reporting the whole thing, you could still provide an alternative amount that we will utilize. But doesn't mean that we're not going to review what documents you've submitted and reach out to you to get a cleaner, better understanding because we do want to utilize the eAR to its full extent and get a very accurate reading of what your water system wants to represent. So after B1.9, then we're going to be asked what are the number of days of cash on hand that you have for your water system? Now, this isn't a monetary amount. This is literally the number of days that your water system has to pay for all of its infrastructure until it can no longer pay it. So let's say you have a reserve fund of $100 and you have a maintenance fee of $1 per day. So with that in mind, you would say my number of days of cash on hand is technically 100 because I only have enough money to sustain my water system for that 100 days within my reserve fund, if that makes sense. I've just seen some confusion as to whether people think that's like the amount of the reserve fund, but no, it's specifically like the actual number of days. And then you can always provide a comment on your revenue in B1.1 1. Now, from gain to expenses, this is where you can report how much revenue your water system has lost annually. The first is going to be for operations and maintenance expenses. That should just be like your standard, the standard wear and tear of a water system operating throughout the year and how much that costs for the water system. And you just want to put down the flat expense fee. You don't want to incorporate any kind of boost into like how much revenue was gained compared to how much was lost. We do that towards the end. So for now, we're going to say, yeah, it costs us $100 to keep our water system operating at a basic level for our calendar year. How much money we've invested into the water system. That could be things like sorry. So that could be things such as like equipment or new assets that you've built into your water system, like having a new pump installed or having new filtration devices included into or incorporated into your water system. Anything that you've done to invest into the quality or functionality of water system that costs the system itself money, you'd want to reflect there. Total financing activity expenses. I believe this one is related. Yeah, this one's related to long-term debt, purchases, and securities. I'm most familiar with 2.3. I think, well, there's a good example actually. If you're not super familiar with what's going on, you can always look at those little question marks next to them. We'll go to this one. And it should provide you a quick explanation as to what this is. Like if I wasn't too sure what finance related expenses are, it could give me a quick snippet here. It looks like it was just retirement of long-term debt, purchase of securities, interest expenses. And it gives you an example if you do not have anything related to that, you could always provide a zero amount. And if you're still not sure, feel free to reach out and we can troubleshoot it together. Every water system is unique, so sometimes specific problems will come up from a specific system, and we just have to look through the documents to get a better understanding of what we should be reporting. And then in the end, it'll summarize all of your expenses together and give you a total amount. Down below. I believe I skipped over. You could also provide other expenses, obviously, and provide a note as to what those expenses relate to. And it should add them up below. Now, you will get a warning if your expenses exceeds your revenue. I don't believe it prevents you from stopping or for submitting your report, but it will give you a quick yellow flag saying that you are losing more money each year than you are gaining. So that might be an indication of your water system, perhaps financially not doing so well. It's not a definitive declaration. It could just be an issue with how it's being reported, or maybe what we're asking for doesn't reflect the true nature of your system's income. But it is something to keep in mind that it will be flagged. I don't remember if going from 8B to 8C takes as long, because I don't think there's any back-end calculations in 8B, but there we go.
Okay, folks, before Will continues with 8C, we are going to be on 8C. I am going to share my screen because there are questions that are in this reporting year that were not in last year. So Will does not go over those questions. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and show you guys what those questions are. And folks, we're almost done. This is the last part of section 8. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Screen, share. Okay. Let me bring this over. Okay. Jonathan, Rachel, can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm on 8B. Let me go to 8C. Okay. So the questions that were not in last reporting year and now are in this reporting year are questions C1.1 through C1.1C. And this is due to a bill that came back, and that's why these questions, they came back. I believe they were in previous years, but I'm not too sure when they got removed. But we have these questions back in back in section 8C of the eAR. And then these questions will appear, just to give you guys some background, these questions appear, so C1.1A, C1.1B, and C, they appear when you select yes, you charge customers, and you selected residential or both. And that's for the questions that are in section 8A. So the question is how many accounts for, and we notice that this shouldn't only say residential. It is for residential and also for single and multifamily. So that's something, typo. But how many accounts for all these accounts had their water shut off during the year due to failure to pay? And of course, if you only clicked residential, you will only see the residential on here. But since for this example, I have it all pulled up here. But these are the questions that are now in the eAR that Will does not go over. Okay, now I am going to play the video and let me, okay, and I'm bringing up the video. Okay. And Jonathan and Rachel, can you guys see the video? I haven't pressed play yet, but can you see the screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so for 8C, which is related to your water shutoffs, basically this is going to be a section that helps you reflect any kind of water system customers that are delinquent customers. So basically anyone who has failed to any customers that have failed to pay for their water rates or any kind of other shutoff related activities that you need to record for your water system. So the first question is going to be C1.7. Do you extend payment or offer a customer payment assistance plan? So basically just asking if you have some kind of customer assistance payment plan. For instance, if a customer can't afford to pay for the water within the time frame that you expect them to, do you have an alternative plan of payment for them that you can offer your customers? So if you say, we'll say yes for this one. The key word here is that this section is used to reflect customer arrearages that are being accrued over time. So this one, you're going to say, yes, I have a payment plan. It's going to be asking you how many customers per customer type are included in that assistance plan. So we'll say we have 10 single family accounts and 5 multifamily accounts with a total of 15 accounts that are on that assistance plan. What's the number of residential streams that we're missing one? So this is the question. C1 is specifically related around missed payments. You just want to provide the number of accounts, not necessarily the number of customers specifically. Like if you have a residential connection and 5 people live there, you would say that that's one residential account, not 5 residential customers that are in arrearages, because we're reflecting the number of accounts here. And then you can provide a comment in C1.9 if you feel like you haven't explained your water system's situation adequately with the above information. Now there are programs out there that allows a water system to potentially transfer customer arrearages outside of the water system scope. A really common one would be like the teeter plan, where customer arrearages are transferred in a way to the local county. Your water system operators and your water system service people will probably be more familiar with this section as far as like where debt can be potentially transferred, but we do have some options available below. Typically it's going to be asked, typically the two that we reflect is mostly, are you transferring your debt to the county or not to the county, like to a third party? And if you have some other type of debt transfer program, you could always select other and provide it in the comment box. That would appear below C1.10 if you select it. Yep. And then just asking if you provide any kind of a bill.
Okay, folks, and again, apologies, I'm pausing it, but there are questions in 8C after C10 that now appear in the eAR, and I'm going to go ahead and share those questions with you all. Okay. So after question C10, the next question that should appear is C111, which asks to enter the website address where the number of annual single-family and multifamily residential service connections / accounts, water shutoff information for the inability to pay is posted. So you would enter a website here, and then if you do not have a website, you would click this button and you shouldn't have to enter anything in this field. And just to let you all know, this C111, this question is referring to question C 1.1, which was how many accounts for residential service connections had their water shut off once during the year due to failure to pay. Then after that, it's C13. Does your water system have a written policy on discontinuation of residential services for inability to pay? You would click yes or no. And if you click yes, when you click yes, if you have it posted on a website, if you could enter that website here. And then if you do not have it posted on a website, you would click on here, and then you shouldn't have to enter anything here. And then obviously if you don't have a written policy, then you wouldn't have anything posted here, and then you should not have to enter anything into these fields. But I would still advise, just in case, to check the box if you do not have a website, even though you did click no, and it would be known that you don't have a written policy that's posted publicly on a website. Then after that, we move on to question C16, which is enter the languages written policies provided to customers. So if you click no, then you would put NA for this. But if you had clicked yes, and you just enter the languages that your policy is written in. Okay, and now we're going to go back to the video. And for the interest of time, we're just going to play the video till the end. There's only about maybe 8 minutes left, and then we'll stop and we'll ask questions. We'll open it up for questions. Okay. Okay.
If you select it. Yep. And then just asking if you provide any kind of a bill assistance to customers. Perhaps you have an agreement with a customer where they don't have to pay their water every other month or something like that. So you can provide other types of assistance, special medical need, just to reflect how that's what kind of agreement you have with those customers. And then there's another one similar to that where it's asking if you provide any kind of benefits to single family or your multifamily. You can select, I guess this one will be specifically for which type of customer. So we'll say we only do it for single family customers. And then you could say, what is the benefit I give them? Yeah, you could say I give them like $50. I give them $50 off every month for their water rate charge, and that's the benefit they are provided. You could say, yes, I am partnered with an outside utility, outside entity. Households, and then you can provide information here. Sorry if I'm a little bit hazy on this section. 8C was not my specialty, but it doesn't mean that we can't help you through it. So if you send us an email once again, we will be able to walk you through this. But yeah, how much benefit is you offer bill forgiveness under circumstances? This one's a pretty big one. So offering bill forgiveness, you could say, yes, we offer bill forgiveness, and you can explain why, and then you have to provide the number of accounts you've forgiven the bill on and the amount that's been forgiven. So we can say for a month, we forgave, $50. And then any comments. But that was 8C. It's mostly just related around customer assistance and customer debt and customer arrearages and how you would want to reflect that for your water system. But that was the entirety of section 8.
Yes, I was wrong with my timing. Now we are done with section 8. Any questions? That was the ending of the video. Are there any questions?
We don't have any questions currently or raised hands.
Okay, while we wait for some questions to come in, we have about 21 minutes left of this webinar. I'm going to go to our eAR website so I can show you guys. If you guys are wanting to look at this video during your own time, just or if you need other resources, let me. So our okay. Sorry, this is our eAR website. I hope most of you are already familiar with this website. But so as we mentioned, the video that we played is posted on our website. It's under the resources tab. So you click that, it'll bring down this. And if you go to tutorial videos, we broke it up into section, we spliced the video to section 8A, 8B, and then 8C. That's just slides guiding you through the 8C. But 8A and 8B is the videos if you guys were interested. I know for some of you this video came out a little bit blurry watching it over Zoom. I apologize for that, but if you want to go at your own pace and watch these videos. But there's also, just letting you all know, there's these other videos, guidance videos that we created for you all that can help you for guiding you through the eAR. And I know someone mentioned about the recordings. We have the recordings here under that same tab, which is the eAR brown bag here. And then we are going to be posting the office hours for this section 8 on here. And next thing, if there are yet no questions, I'm going to go ahead and go into the next office hours, which is going to be March 21st. So it's also a Friday, the same time. If you have not registered yet, you can register here on our website. And just to let you all know, we decided that the last office hours we had it scheduled for just to cover, I believe, sections 9 through finalize, but we decided as a team that it'd be best that we are going to be covering all the sections except section 8. And so for this, bring all your questions that you all have. And we are going to be having subject matter experts for the sections, for some of the sections that Jonathan and Wendy, who is not here with us today, but will be with us at the next one, that we may not be able to answer, but the subject matter experts, they know more information about that. That is all. Oh, also just in case, there is, if you guys want a full summary of all the help tips, because I know there's a lot going on, and as we've mentioned already a bunch of times, a lot going on with Section 8. And if you want to look at the help tips all summarized into one document, you can go on here and just scroll down to Section 8 to look at the help tips for that. But that is all I have. I'm going to stop, or I don't know if I can stop sharing, but are there any questions?
We don't have any questions or raised hands. I'm not sure if you mentioned this. Did you mention the Section 8 videos under resources that we
Yes,
just
yeah, I
created?
mentioned
Okay,
that was the first
perfect.
thing I showed. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, we'll wait.
PJ says thank you.
Okay, awesome. We'll give about 2 minutes. So 11:45, we'll wait and for questions. And if not, we'll go ahead and close this webinar out. Thank you all so much for attending. I know this section may, there's a lot and it may not be as interesting, but we hope this was helpful to you all. And again, the next one's March 21st, and it's going to be covering all sections of the eAR. So bring all the questions that you have. And again, if you need to email us, the email, I believe you guys can see the answered, everyone, the attendees can see the answers. The email for our customer service inbox is on the answered questions there. Again, we're getting a lot of of emails in right now, and we're trying to answer them as quickly as possible. Okay. Anything else that maybe I missed, Jonathan, that you can think of? Or Rachel, if you want to say anything else. Okay.
I think you covered it.
Okay. Well, folks, it's 11:45. We'll go ahead and give you guys some time back. Thank you all for attending. I hope you guys all have a great day and a great weekend, and we'll all see you in what is it, in next week on Friday. Thank you all. Okay.